Welcome back to The World Needs a Little Talk. Again, I'm Austin Schwartz, if you haven't figured it out already, and
Mathew Umbarger.
And this will be week 2 of discussing the Lord of the Worlds. And you just noticed that I got my copy when you came in. And
so the guy on the cover is supposed to be the Lord of the World, the Spelzenberg dude, I guess.
That's what I presume.
Yeah, everybody's bowing to him. It looks like there's different kinds of people there.
Oh yeah, we got lots of different types of people down here.
Everybody's represented.
That's interesting. Notice this is Doomsday Classics.
That's weird.
So this is considered a Doomsday Classic. We could consider just pulling up this line and start looking at all Doomsday Classics.
There we go.
That's kind of on par with what we're doing.
There we go.
Oh, look! I noticed they have a nuclear explosion right there. A small icon in the bottom. I'll throw it up on the screen for you guys when I edit. But that's really
that's their
touching at home.
That's their logo. Doomsday Classics logo.
Oh yeah, they got it on here twice actually. They got
that's on the back too.
Oh, 3
I thought it
times.
was a tree.
There you go.
It is a mushroom cloud, in fact.
You're looking at the brighter side of things.
What a pretty tree.
Tree represents life, but we're kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. We're at death.
Yeah. I do wish I had gotten that edition, because this is put together obviously by people who didn't really care.
Yeah.
But that one, at least, it looks like they took some pride in their work. Well, it's actually a reprint, I can tell. So this just took the stuff off of like Gutenberg website and just copied and pasted it and tried to get as much on one page as possible. But
what's
that's a
interesting,
nice reprint.
the text size isn't the exact same throughout all these pages.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, for the most part, it looks pretty consistent. But look here, right? And then flip to we got random text sizes.
Okay, but it must mean something.
That's what I would think. But
mine doesn't do any of that cool stuff, and it leaves out the prologue that you were telling me about.
Yes.
It's like, what are you talking about?
Okay, so it only has it in the book 2, chapter 1, the encounter, is where this text is smaller, and then after that it goes back to normal.
It's the newspaper.
So I think it might be the newspaper. But
yeah, here we go. I've got it's set off, but it's not smaller.
You're guessing on yours.
Yeah, I know.
You can tell it didn't get as much love. I mean, this one's thicker too. It looks
I know.
Twice the length.
I think it's mostly the same length, except for the prologue. It's just like, look at the size of the print though.
Yeah,
it's like 11
they crammed everything in there.
And like 2 of the margins, so you have to pull it wide open to read what's like in the middle. Anyway. I mean, they were pinching their pennies.
Well, were they saving money or were they saving trees?
Okay, they're saving. Yes, these people care about trees. I bet that's it.
There's the optimistic look on those folks.
This is not a Doomsday Classic.
That's right. The Doomsday Classic's all about using up as much tree as possible. It's all about representing the end. It's done.
This is 186 pages. How many pages do you have? I'm sorry. It doesn't. I know this doesn't matter.
No, this is important information, folks. Mine's 384 pages.
So it's nearly twice as long. It's the same book. They crammed like the book on half as many pages. That's amazing. Wow. So, well, you go and look, and there's not even like a printing house. Like, who did this? I have no idea.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yours doesn't have any information whatsoever.
Made in the United States, Orlando, Florida, on the 1st of February, 2023. Yeah. This is hot off the press.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's
fresh material you got.
It pushed a button. Here it was. Anyway,
with no info. That might you got.
It might be illegal.
I was about to say you got some illegal. You have a legal book right here.
I got it off of. Well, I hate to say where I got it. So,
wow,
you can guess where I got this, and this is what happens when you buy things from them.
We might have to. If you don't see Umbarger on the podcast next week. It's
because I got taken out.
They got him.
By Bezos.
They came for him for grabbing the illegal book.
So that might be it. I would so I'll just put in a plug. I should have. The problem was I didn't give myself enough time. I knew I should have gone to Eighth Day Bookstore and ordered this.
Yeah.
Now, see, they might even have a copy of this, but no. I had a bunch of books, and I knew that it would cost more at the Eighth Day Bookstore, and I knew I could get them like that from Amazon. But this is what happens.
Let me go ahead and do my plug. I went to thriftbooks.com.
Okay.
Where this was actually listed as a used copy.
Really?
Not even new. Yeah, look at this. This looks brand spanking new.
It does.
But I will equally say from ordering from thrift books frequently, don't expect every used copy you get to look brand spanking new. But you get wonderful deals overall, and used copies just mean that there's stories within the story.
That's right.
Other people used that book, and sometimes they leave annotations, and you get to
I love that.
other people's little notes in there. So
sometimes, you can find plenty of used books at Eighth Day Bookstore, and so I have bought used books there before, and I buy a lot of new books there too. Anyway, so you've got things written down.
I've got a full page of notes actually. Well, it could have. I'm noticing now my font got smaller. My personal font. I was closing the margins the further
You could
down.
probably get like all that into like 200 pages.
I could, yeah.
So, as I read this, Austin, I'm really enjoying it, but I'm like, this is an uber Catholic book. Like, it's very, very like, and there's a lot of things that it'd be hard. I think if I'd read this back in my Protestant days, or even my early Catholic days, I would have been a little bewildered by some of the things in here. Now that I've been Catholic for like 18 years, I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing there. But anyway. So I'm just curious, like what it's like for you to read this.
Yeah.
It is written, I think we said this last week, it's written by a convert to Catholicism from Anglicanism, he was an Anglican priest, became a Catholic priest. And us converts, a lot of times we're kind of zealous. We get really careful because we had to choose this.
Yeah.
And it came at some cost. And
I wasn't forced.
No. And we're a little fanatical. And there are parts of this book I'm like, oh, this is a kindred fanatic. Like I'm a little like, I can recognize, but even there are parts of this where I'm like, so I don't know. But I'm enjoying it overall. I would recommend this certainly to Catholics.
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying this overall as well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I was curious.
I would equally recommend this book openly because I'm not Catholic, and
all right,
I find this enjoyable. I have not been overwhelmed or confused or baseball club to the face with Catholicism. So I'd.
You heretic. Okay.
But no, like it's and maybe I will say where I left off at is Percy went to, coincidentally, you last time we talked, you were like, things are gonna start like connecting, and they did. Yeah. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Percy's that old lady he met earlier is the same old lady that's Oliver's mom, and then he goes to Percy, and Percy goes to Oliver's house, and it's not even realizing this is Oliver's house, and it's like, so I would like that whole section. I was like, oh, whoa, hold on,
we need to tell them who Oliver is.
Okay, yeah, we'll back up.
Okay, well, I mean, so Oliver is sort of, he's they've dissolved Parliament, so it's not exactly, or maybe they haven't, but they don't have lords and commoners
Yeah.
anymore. So it is. He's a politician.
Like he's a political icon. Like people know
Yeah.
him. Like the
He's kind of like the prime minister in some ways. I think is that.
yeah. I just
can't remember. What
I don't know that he's as big as the prime minister would be. You know,
I'm not
like
sure.
no, I don't. Well, I don't think it ever gave an exact title to his position, but it's
He's
very
in government.
clear that he's
Yeah.
in government. He's an
He's a-
icon. Like he's big
He's like
and
Nancy Pelosi. Right. Or yeah. So he's a mover and a shaker.
uh-huh.
Yeah. So, and he is a big part of the government efforts to suppress Christianity,
Yeah.
but the only Christianity that's really left is Catholicism, and so he's been giving like some radical speeches, trying to I don't know exactly what his goal is. He gets shot by a fanatical Catholic. Supposedly, I don't know. Do you think?
Well, so
When
I
I
was
saw that, I was like,
I was gonna ask you because so does it go into detail or depth over him getting shot at all? Because and maybe like I don't know, maybe my audiobook jumped or something, but I felt confused because it went from last time we heard about Oliver was that night and Percy left. But then next chapter begins and it's talking about Oliver came out in a bandage and gave the opening speech for Felsenburgh. And I was
no, there's this dramatic scene where he gets shot.
okay, does it go like back in time?
No.
Okay.
No,
Well,
that's good.
mine literally went from like
Ooh.
boom to he gives the opening speech in a bandage for Felsenburgh.
Nope. So he gives a speech before that where somebody shoots him. And
Does he happen to come up in a bandage during that speech?
no.
Okay, so mine jumped.
Yeah.
Because it specifically like made it pointed that he's wearing a bandage
Right.
when he comes out to give this speech, and I was like,
Yep.
I wasn't told he got shot yet, so
He got shot.
okay. So mine must have jumped. My
Okay.
audiobook must have jumped, I guess.
So there's another like Amazon failure.
Yeah.
That's
maybe
right.
that's it. But well, no. So I was confused. So I hit rewind. I was like, wait, that bandage has got to be like for a bullet wound. So I backed it up, and then I was like, no, it didn't say that. Huh.
So my suspicion, I guess, was that this was kind of like a red flag type operation. False flag, excuse me. Red flag. False flag operation. So they, they found somebody who's a little. I'm not sure though. It might have actually been a fanatic Catholic. No one finds out because the mob kills him as soon as he shoots him. You didn't get any of this.
So that's the thing I got.
Well, they talked about it later.
But the thing I got was suddenly it was my book just started going like there were 70 fatalities. The police were called in everywhere. The public's cut off. Everyone's confined. There's riots happening, and I was like, "Whoa! Like what happened? What's going on?" I stopped and I wrote one of my notes here is a big question mark over like what happened.
Yeah.
I don't think the book was very clear to me what happened, and then it talked about. And all of that we cut to for a speech, and Oliver comes out in a bandage and gives the opening for this event. And I was like, so was I just supposed to infer that he got shot and things went crazy? Because it kind of just was like, he got shot and things went crazy. It never told me he got shot. I was like, it just was like, boom, here we go.
It's pretty explicit in the actual book. So yeah,
it might have just jumped, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I got distracted for a minute, but I don't think so. Like I said, I rewinded it.
Yeah, it's pretty. Because there's a little bit of stuff there. So anyway, it's a really dramatic moment then, because his mother is what was raised Catholic. She has a sense she's about to die, and so she contacts this priest, Father Percy, and they think, because he's occupied, Oliver and Mabel are occupied with Felsenburgh coming to England.
And they're going to watch him.
So she sends her servant to Father Percy to fetch him, and as he's on his way, he gets the crowds are just going crazy because Felsenburgh is coming, and so he struggles to get there. He gets there hours later than he intended, and as a consequence, they wind up seeing him right after he's given her absolution, and it's a dramatic moment.
Is all a very wonderful scene. Before they even get there, I'd like to point out how she is randomly with Father, is he going to get me? Is he going to get me? And he's like, who are you talking about? And she says, Felsenburgh.
That's right.
And that's all of this. I'm like, we gotta know. He's flat out telling us this is not good business. This is not good. And she was
forgotten about that bit.
And then he's like, what do you mean, Felsenburgh? He's just like, yeah, I know he's in town, but it's just American politician, like whatever. She was like, there's something sinister. Her exact words, sinister. I wrote that too. And then she was like, I had a dream. I was a young child and I was in a house. I've never been at that house, but it was a big white house. It was home. And then I heard voices coming from the other door, like bad voices.
Right.
And it was Felsenburgh's voice, and then she comes back out of it, and she's like, don't let him get me, Father, don't let him get me.
Felsenburgh is like the boogeyman.
Yeah. I was like, very much boogeyman. Yeah. There's a boogeyman right here. But then afterward, they, Oliver's probably ready to kill Percy. But, Mabel the whole time's like doing all the talking. She's like, stay calm. Would you join us downstairs? Let's go downstairs and have a talk. And then he sits down, he's willing to talk with them. And all the things she's asking are not what he anticipated whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's more about the process, like the Catholic process. She's like, so what did you do for our mother? That's right. And he's like, well, I gave her adoration. And then she's like, well, what is that title? What was that process? And then she keeps going with that. He's kind of like, okay, well, like, why are you, stands up. He's like, what's this all about? What are you asking me? And internal monologue. He's like, what's our game? Like, what's she's trying to get at? And he was like, all right, well, I need us to stay calm and answer questions to go through with this. Or thus, I'm giving them leverage against me, right? And then the whole time, it just keeps describing Oliver's like boiling in his seat. But she's staying super calm the whole time. And then, where is it at? She says, toward the end, when she's letting him go, she's like, there will be peace. Peace at last. Felsenburgh made us aware of this. You'll know. You'll recognize. You'll see him when you go back to London. Then you'll understand. Right. And I was like, this is where things are I'm like, it's starting to really pick up at this point. And I'm like, okay, it's
a little creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also, it's interesting. So I think with Mabel, that scene is very interesting. Because I was also, what's going on here? And I think there's a couple things. So first of all, she's not threatened at all by Catholicism because she's encountered Felsenburgh and like, it's just like, this isn't really a threat anymore.
She's like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I think she actually says like Catholicism, or it's like inferred that Catholicism's not a threat anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, how could anyone resist? So since she's encountered Felsenburg, she's like completely enthralled. But then there's also an aspect of, I think she has a sort of even like a morbid curiosity about Catholicism. Yeah, that's provoking. Like you see this earlier, where she's asking Oliver questions about what do they actually believe, and do they really think there is a heaven? Do they, so she's never actually known a religious person, I think. And so here she has this Catholic priest in her house, and it'd be a little bit like one of us having a witch doctor, visiting a neighbor. We have all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Right? What do your rituals entail? And what does this look like?
Yeah. Do you actually kill cats?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's part of what's going on there. It's morbid in the sense that like Catholicism is it's a dead thing to her. It's not that threat, but there's still a curiosity about it. Whereas Oliver doesn't have a curiosity. This is, and he's still weirdly, of course, it's his mom. He feels it'd probably be sort of like, if I found out that my mother was leaving the Christian faith. She's 70 years old. Said she, in her later years, for whatever reason, decided to abandon Christianity for who knows what, Islam or Hinduism or something. I'd be concerned about that. And I think that he has that sense, like, she's being taken by this false religion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and on top of that, to come back to your own home, and then there's just this intruder that you didn't invite, but you can't. You, of course, you want to be frustrated with him, but you can't because he was invited.
Yeah.
Like it was, he's not an actual intruder.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mabel wants him to come back and actually bring communion to his mother, and Oliver doesn't let that happen. And so then the mother dies. Well, she's actually, you've gotten that, right?
I haven't got to.
Oh, okay.
I knew she would. That was obvious that she was going to.
Yeah.
But
all right. Well, we'll leave it at that, and we can talk about that next week. Yeah.
Yeah. But
that is maybe one of the most it's all well written, but that whole episode is very well done. That's just the
that whole section had my full investment. It was very well written. I was like, and if you thinking about it, like it's all we're witnessing is a conversation. It's not like a lot of times people are like, I was like, when there's like some high stakes or action sequence going on, but this was just conversation over a mother's conversion back to the faith, and it was that well written. I was like,
there's a lot of tension and drama. And it's all very realistic. It's not melodramatic. He's not. In part, there is some melodrama in part, but that episode sounds melodramatic, but it's really not.
It's very
and real. I think. So,
But then I will, since we were on the topic of Felsenburg there.
Okay.
I will.
Oh yeah, we were going to talk. Go ahead.
Well, I grabbed some more stuff they were saying about him. This was after they talked about the riots, fatalities, everything broke down. They're talking more about his biography that came out, how it's amassing a huge number in sales, and still no one knows anything about the guy, but the biography's doing great. And then I'm starting to think that's maybe getting somewhere, because they go on to say that this is the greatest orator that the world has ever known in all of human history. Then they go on he knows all languages, and I'm like, okay, like where?
Just for me to interject here. maybe eventually we do, but I'm 2/3 through the book, and Felsenberg hasn't said a word that we. So we hear he's a great speaker, but we don't. We're not ever given any of his speeches.
Well, here's the thing I'm gonna get to is
Okay.
because they talk about his speech and that he gives in
But
this.
but it's really from an authorial perspective. It's a really good move because
Yeah,
to try and actually convey that is
with your own words.
Yes.
Then it's like,
But if everyone around is saying, "I heard this guy speak and it was amazing," you should have heard it.
yeah. And then it does keep us going. I wonder if we'll get it at some point.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear us speak.
But anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
But
There.
no. Well, then they go on to say that he's super intelligent, not just of worldly things, but like they don't even the way he describes it is if he can't describe it, but of the greater things and things of inner workings of beyond, and like I was like,
It's metaphysics.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then they said that in some places he's already starting to be hailed as a Messiah.
Right.
And then you said later we learned this isn't true, but again they emphasized that all of America loves him, even though he has not started his own party or is non-party affiliate. Like all of America has began to back him.
Right.
And then so then they talk about his speech, and then they go on to say that there's no documentation of his exact words. All of the reporters there don't have
That's right.
a true statement of what it was about,
They all contradict each
because
other,
the
right?
moment that he started talking, and then everyone was immediately just like stuck, enthralled by his statement. And then to explain that, they go, we can't really explain it, but the psychologists will get back to you. Like they'll have a reason. It's no big deal.
Right.
And then, but it was
That's
like,
right, I remember that.
but then, so then, as the narrator, it was described that London, all of London itself, was a temple of the Lord.
Yes.
Like, all of this is building up in a pretty scary way to me. I'm like, it's getting, this book is really good. That's what I'll say. It's like, this is.
Yeah, in the whole bit about I hadn't thought about that till you just said that, because the whole prediction about the man of sin is that he will go into the holy place and declare himself equal to God. That's in Second Thessalonians. So that's part of this whole, like London itself is this temple.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and then I think Percy at one point says he had never seen like a gathering like this, or like someone like retaining attention like this, or like heard of it since Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And I was
right.
like, this is.
But he's doing it better than Jesus did.
He says that.
Yeah.
He says that too. He admits that, and I'm like, ooh, is no one picking up with the pieces yet? I'm like, I know that the Catholic faith is diminishing in here, but like, I know you guys gotta start. Someone's got to start catching what's going on.
Right. Well, this is what I was thinking about. Okay, so this whole bit about him coming out of nowhere. I'm looking for this. Here we go. All right. So there are these two places in the Gospel of John that I think Benson is maybe utilizing here. So in John chapter 7, there's this whole episode where Jesus comes to the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem. Everyone's speculating, is this the Messiah? Isn't he? Why don't they arrest him if he's not? And then they say he can't be the Messiah because we don't know where he's from. And when the Messiah comes, we won't know where he comes from. John 7, verse 27. We know where this man comes from, and when the Christ appears, no one will know where he comes from. And I think that's part of what Benson's deal with.
Mm.
Like Felsenberg comes out of nowhere.
And no one knows where he comes from.
Yeah. So part of this is this. There's a kind of theory that is in church fathers that when the Antichrist first appears, the Jewish people, so based on passages like this, that there will be a mass deception first of the Jewish people and then the rest of the world. And then also the Jewish people will be the first to recognize that he's not actually the Messiah. And there's a persecution of the Jews that starts as a consequence.
So really, that's the one thing that this doesn't have is nothing about the Jews. We've not literally throughout this whole book, the Jews have never been mentioned.
I think they show up in the end as they go to Palestine.
Now they'll find a secret society.
I don't know.
All the Jews are living in caves. they went hid.
Yeah. But then also, this passage I think is important. So in John chapter 5, verse 43, Jesus says, "I've come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you will receive." So there's this sort of theme in John where you read that, it doesn't sound like, oh, it's just saying that you want somebody to have better credentials than I have, because all I have is God, right?
Yeah.
But the church fathers have seen these two verses as referring to the Antichrist. And so this idea that when the Antichrist comes, he's going to come in his own authority, and people are going to be deceived by him, and he's going to come out of nowhere with his own authority.
Yeah,
and I think that's what
that's very much what's happening here. I only say they did give confirmation that Felsenberg is 33.
Okay.
It wasn't there was no proof that's his exact age, but it's intentionally stated that Felsenberg, has white hair. I think they said broad eyebrows. If that has any importance, but whatever. And then they said, and the appearance of a 33-year-old man.
There you go.
And I was like, okay, yeah, intentional. It was intentional.
Yeah.
But
so Oliver and Percy and Felsenberg are all about 33 years old. Yeah, that's weird, but yeah,
intentional.
Yeah. So for Percy, I think that it's interesting because you got Percy and Felsenberg they look, not only are they the same age, but they look identical. Have you heard that yet?
Yeah, Percy and Felsenberg look.
Yeah. So Father Percy and this Felsenberg character look very much alike. And I think part of what's going on there is Felsenberg is the Antichrist. Well, every priest is considered to be an alter Christus. He's another Christ. So not an antichristus, but an alter Christus. And so they both look like Jesus in a certain way. And you might think, well, why the white hair? Well, in the book of Revelation, Jesus has white hair. And I think that's actually a little...
I actually never knew that. But
in the very first chapter of Revelation, when Jesus shows up in the cave to John the Revelator, he has hair white as wool. Yeah. And I think that's why these guys
so that'd be why he would choose white hair.
Yeah. And it's not just a weird thing. It's not just that he's like, like Steve Martin or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we need Percy. Someone's got to start putting up the fight before Jesus gets back.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's interesting. I skipped ahead just to see like what's going on.
You jump there.
I just like look at the last and I don't think Jesus actually. We don't get to the second.
He doesn't show up.
I think we get right to the cusp of it. I think. Anyway. So, we'll see. So what else do you got?
We did all that. When I right here, oh, that's where we talked. I mentioned that. That's where he said that compared him to Jesus. That no one has had such a fall.
Yeah. Like the Beatles.
Ooh, this goes back to the scene from earlier, but he was having eternal monologue with himself. He was like, I'm playing a losing game. I armed myself with steel, but the enemy is vapor.
Who says this? Oliver?
No, Percy says this when he's being
Ooh.
when Mabel's talking to him.
Oh yeah, that's a great line.
I was like, I wrote that line down. I was like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That was good.
I remember that. Yeah,
but then it got me
so
thinking
good.
back to earlier because he usually says, I'm playing a losing game. That yes, he's specifically referring to the conversation here, but I think it goes back to the beginning and the idea of a whole that Christianity, Catholicism is losing.
Yeah.
And very much at this point, I'm starting to look at it the same way, like because I'm seeing that the bad guy is pretty clear here. I'm like,
Yeah.
So I'm here going like, we're losing the battle. Like this, and right now there's not even a glimpse of hope of like a turnaround. Like it's the whole world is starting to back around and support this guy.
Oh, it gets
which is I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm already seeing that the riots started 70 fatalities.
Yeah.
Like how much worse is this gonna get? Because it's got to get much worse.
It's interesting. So I would say, like, even at the beginning of the book, it's not as though he has a number of consolations in his life, but you have that episode with the mental prayer that we talked about in the last episode. But then this is kind of where things change for him, and there's a sort of dejection that sets in. And I think part of it is experiencing the crowd. Well, is it he himself feels this compulsion to worship Felsenburg. Is that before or after he goes up there? It's afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was afterward.
Yeah, but even so, he's seen like the effect of Felsenburg's coming on London, on everything, and it's disturbing. And then he talks about how it should have. This is a pretty big fish to catch. The mother of this prominent politician, and that should have been some consolation, but it's not much in light of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, I feel like there's some kind of I guess the supernatural effect coming on here.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of they're still subtle, but you'd be able to catch them. The red flags popping up around the Felsenburg, right?
Yes,
because we're catching them as readers, and I mean equally we went into this book knowing to watch for the Antichrist, but like even so, there's things that pop up that it's like, why isn't anyone catching that yet, right? Why isn't it clicking for anyone? And so I feel like he's got some kind of supernatural authority he's using to help himself in this. And equally, like I think the biggest argument I have for that is that speech that he gave, where it was there's no documentation even from any of the reporters because they were all just immediately stuck in. Like,
yep. And they can't remember a word that was amazing. Yeah. There's a place where it talks about after he is made president of Europe. You haven't gotten that far yet. Okay. So Felsenburg is going to be made president of Europe. And when he does, there are all these weird reports coming in. And so for instance, these guys, they go out into the middle in one of the cities in Europe, I think it's in Spain, and they bare their breasts and they plunge knives into their chest as a sacrifice to Felsenburg. It's just that we don't have anything else. Like nothing can top our experience of seeing this happen. There's nothing that lives for anymore. This woman, she begins like acting hysterically and just frothing at the mouth, and she dances herself to death on the stage. And you're like, these are all marks of demon possession. Like
Yeah,
this is people are not acting rationally. So yes, I think
this is not good.
it's not good, but it's done very the way that Benson does this is, I think, very he pulls it off well because he doesn't pull back the veil and allow us to see the spiritual entities that are doing these things. He just shows us the effects, and even obviously Percy and the other fellows later, the Pope, one of the fellows, the Pope, the Cardinals,
Father Percy and the boys.
Father Percy and Pope and the Cardinals, they believe in demons and such, but they never. There's one place where they talk about how their warfare, quoting Ephesians chapter 6, our warfare is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers and the principalities of the air, and how we need spiritual armor for this combat. That's the closest so far in the first 2/3 of the book that you get to any kind of direct mention of the dark spiritual world. But it's obvious that that's what's behind the scenes orchestrating all this. Yeah, good point. There's something preternatural about Felsenburgh. He's not. It can't just be that he's a great orator.
Yeah.
Or that he has this beautiful white hair. That there's something else going on.
And has spent the first 33 years of his life, learning every language in existence.
Exactly.
Not even well, and of course, he also learned politics and every worldly thing and otherworldly thing.
That's right, metaphysics as well.
Yeah, he taught himself a lot in 33 years.
Yeah, that is interesting. So yeah, he has access then to knowledge that most human beings would not have access to.
Yeah, I think that's a flag of its own. It's for someone to come out and be that knowledgeable. Every language.
Yeah, there's something weird about that, for sure.
If anyone popped up on the news like that, I'm gonna call you right away. I'm gonna be like, Umbarger, it's happening. I don't know what we.
The language thing is interesting. Language is really important in this book, because so on the one hand, he's able to speak all these other languages. That never shows up in any, like, this is the first time I've ever heard this associated with the Antichrist. But it's interesting he picks up on that. And if you think about language, so why, according to the Bible, are there thousands of different human languages? Like, what is the etiological folk tale or myth even of this happening?
What is it?
Well, this is the story of the Tower of Babel.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then Babel, in a way, is sort of, it's not reversed, but it's compensated for on the Feast of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit is given to the church and the apostles are able to speak to all these people who speak all these different languages, but they don't know those languages. That's the key. So he's like a sort of sinister version of the apostles, because the apostles didn't have command of those languages. They're just speaking Aramaic, and everyone's hearing it as their own language.
Yeah.
But he is actually capable, like he has this uncanny knowledge that he hasn't been trained in. And then the other thing about the Tower of Babel is that I think one of the messages of the Tower of Babel is that God loves diversity. He loves different cultures. He didn't want us all to be part of one thing. And this is hard for us because when you have people from different cultures, you're going to have necessarily things like wars and strife and political and social and economic injustice. But the answer isn't to take everyone and glue them all together into one giant nation state. But that's what's happening.
Which is exactly what Felsenberg's attempting to do and succeeding at is uniting all the people.
And what Benson makes, he's good at making it sound attractive. Like, all the world will be one. It sounds like some of our pop stars.
There will be peace.
There will be peace.
There will be peace at last.
Joy me. Right? We will bring peace to the galaxy.
I mean, yeah,
there is a little bit of that. But and also, but he's not going to do this, so the Catholics, let them be Catholics. We don't need them, but we're not, and there's persecution against them breaking out, and they're murdering them. It intensifies later, but at least through the first 2/3 of the book, the official stance of the government is to condemn that activity. The people are doing it anyway, so it's interesting. Yeah, and then you have Esperanto. So Esperanto, the whole story of Esperanto, which is the official language in England, the whole point of Esperanto is to sort of unify Europe. That was why it was invented 100 years ago. And because so you wouldn't need everyone to know French or German or you just wherever you went, everyone would speak Esperanto. It didn't work, but that was sort of the goal.
Yeah, the idea of it.
And it's clear Benson doesn't like that. But because they've won, the bad guys have won, and that's everyone's speaking Esperanto instead of English. English is gone.
Yeah.
Except for like Catholics are speaking English. And then and Latin. They speak Latin. So language is really important in this novel. And I think part of it has to do with that a sort of loving what is particular about our home and not wanting it to become just like every other place. So anyway, which is similar to what things Chesterton writes about around the same time. It's kind of a Catholic idea in 1907 or so. So Chesterton talks about this. Tolkien, I think, in his letters for sure, writes about some of these things. Anyway, I've been jabbering for a while. What we got a little bit of time left.
Yeah, okay, so the other thing that I want to hit is last week I mentioned how I found it, the whole interaction when he not fires, the priest comes in and says that he's no longer a believer.
Yeah,
Francis comes in and I said that Percy seems a little harsh or lacking or not very charismatic during that interaction. And then I pointed out again that when the old lady, which now we learned the old lady is Oliver's mom, approaches him after his prayer, that again he's a little, and so true. So I thought about it, and I think what he's doing here, he's like wanting to people to show and recognize, like, these people are normal people too. Yeah. They're gonna have bad days. They're gonna go through moods, and then sometimes you're gonna catch them at the wrong time, just like you catch anyone else at the wrong time. And and I think that's why he's giving us these scenes. And then equally we get Percy's internal dialogue. So like when we're talking about when Father Francis comes in and he's like he's letting Percy know that he's leaving the church, and Percy's like, okay. Right, and then
he's probably seen it coming.
Yeah,
he's been trying to counsel him for a while, but
but then it didn't work, and Father Francis is like, I guess no longer Father Francis is like, but can we still be friends? Yeah. Like, you mean a lot to me, like, because they've been friends, like they've cared a lot for each other, and then Percy's kind of like, friend.
Yeah.
How can
Yeah.
what are we gonna have to talk about if you don't believe in God? And he's like, well, I just thought friends, like a friendship. And he's like, oh, I guess I'll still talk to you if I see you.
You're right. Yeah.
And it's
I
like,
can be polite.
yeah. And then, later, we get Percy's perspective. He's having retrospect. He's thinking about the interaction, and he admits to himself, he's like, I think I was acting a bit incompetent during that situation.
Yeah.
Like he's recognizing I could have handled that better.
Yeah.
So I think like yes, like especially if you think about it, that these two have like devoted their lives to Christ.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, and they've been doing it together. One of them's like, and they're super good friends. One of them's like, I can't anymore. Like that's gonna be that would be heartbreaking for Percy. Right. Like that would crush him.
Sure. But I think it's also really, I think there's something realistic about that. I think he's saying, because their friendship was built around faith.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably why they know each other. And so now you want to act as though nothing has happened. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, we can't do that. I think it's, when I became Catholic, I was hoping I would maintain old relationships the way I always, and I've not been able to. Things are different, I still care deeply for these people, but it's hard to have conversations like we used to. That struck me as very real, actually. It's bittersweet. It's hard. It's.
What is it? So people not willing to,
No, it's just different. It's just they're don't care about the same things. So friendship. One of the things C.S. Lewis talks about that, the difference between philia, friendship love, and eros, romantic love, is with eros, you're looking at the other person, desiring them. With philia, you and the other person are looking at a third thing together, and there's a common interest. That's how friendship kind of, it can grow beyond that, but that's usually what draws people together. Is this, so like with Lewis and Tolkien, it was their love of Norse mythology. When they first met each other, Lewis wrote in his journal, like, pretty harmless fellow, nothing that are like a good slap or two folks. He didn't really like Tolkien. But they came to really love and cherish each other's friendship because they had this love for Norse mythology, and from that they could develop, affection in other ways. I think he's just acknowledging that. It seems natural to me.
Yeah.
Now, he's pretty cold though. Yeah, like
he's cold, but then equally, he does have. He thinks about it later. He thinks he's going to handle it different, and I think that's more deeper, showing like, even though he's a priest, he's human. Like
that's right.
The rest of us.
And that's right. He has his own faults. He's not particularly likable, actually, as a character.
Yeah.
To be honest, he's like, we kind of get things from his perspective. He's admirable, but he's not like this sort of guy that I'd want to go get drinks with. Maybe, does that make sense?
Yeah.
He's, the other thing is, I think there's just this sort of suspicion that's there's living in this world. I think he's trying to convey this. He's always on his guard. He's afraid that this might be a trap.
Yeah. That's for how good, like we keep saying this book, because it is really good, and like how well written it is. You made a good point that none of these characters I would really want to hang out with or go have have beer with. No, none of them. I'd say like I want to pursue a friendship. Well, I'll tell one.
Who's that?
I'd love to get a drink with Felsenberg. I'm kidding. But yeah, it's working.
All right. Well, thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
The world needs a little talk.
Yeah, it does.
So
All right.
we'll see you next week.
One more week on the Lord of the World.
They want to be after y'all. Yeah, we can. This can go in the bloopers.
I'll just start going again. We actually have it. And,
Oh, you turned it off. Good for you.